Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, June the 5th. On this episode of The Word, we are going to have some fun stuff to start, some serious stuff to talk about too, and then just agronomy answers. So much going on in the field, I will never get to it all. Let's go! Yes, volunteering. Now, this is a terrible time of year to talk about volunteering, but it's such an important part of our community. And at the Thistle Theatre Board of Directors, I'm currently the president, if you can imagine. Oh, that's an auspicious title of the Thistle Theatre Board of Directors. But our secretary brought a little document about volunteering. And the question was, do you know the value of being a volunteer? And of course, somebody did a study. So the Do Good Institute, now you gotta love that. The Do Good Institute. You're volunteering, you're doing good. There's a Do Good Institute at the University of Maryland, and they figured out what the value of a volunteer's time was. And when you do the conversion, they did it in US dollars. I converted it, of course, to Canadian dollars. When you are volunteering, your time that is worth $44 an hour. Now, that doesn't compare to needing to sit in the sprayer and get the spraying done timely or getting that last acre of corn in before it rains. But man, most of the year, $44 an hour is a heck of a rate of pay. And I just thought, wow, we keep volunteering. If you're not volunteering, ask yourself why. Get out, just participate as part of the audience. We're going to get through this seeding season sometime. Do good. Be part of the Do Good Institute. Do good. Absolutely. Next, as part of the fun stuff, I only got one person that bugged me about turning rental spreaders into something useful, turn them into plowshares for moldboard plows. And only one person said, "Hey, Pete, I like it. You are promoting tillage." It's kind of like, well, we'd turn them into plowshares and then we'd have to turn that into something useful. But man, I thought I'd get a lot of feedback on that. I got almost zero. And last, on the fun stuff, last week I talked about bird damage and avapel, and I talked about a grower who on the gravel knoll had bird damage, didn't know what was doing it. And I just went with it. I just thought, well, he's obviously, he knows it's bird damage. Our very own Lindsay Smith just was on vacation, still listened to Wheat Pete's Word, and she sent me a text saying, "Pete, are you sure that was bird damage? Because it's a gravel knoll. On a gravel knoll, couldn't be wireworm or cutworm or look at you go, Lindsay Smith. Man, you are a budding agronomist. You're right. I should have asked more questions." And it might have been bird damage because that corn could have come up first and the birds were there, and then they moved on to better picking somewhere. But yep, that's a great comment, Lindsay. Make sure you ask all those questions. Meanwhile, ran into an old friend, Steve Johns, used to work for Syngenta at the Ag Business Breakfast meeting, and he gave me another one for you all to consider. When you're along the bush, he's actually seen black squirrels. He got the camera out, he set it up, he's, what is doing this? Black squirrels will do the same thing. Come along, pull the corn out, eat the seed, move to the next one. It's just cool what happens in nature, not that it always helps us from a cropping perspective. Okay, I want to move on and to some very serious stuff. So it is Stroke Awareness Week, and you may have heard about this, but it doesn't take but a minute, and I think it's really important because with strokes, if you can catch them early, they actually have medical procedures now that if you can treat them within the first 4 to 6 hours, you can reverse almost all of the negative impacts of a stroke. The agricultural community getting older, strokes get to be a little bit more of a risk. The acronym is FAST, F-A-S-T, be fast. F is for your face. Is one side of your face drooping? A is for arms. Are you having trouble moving your arms? Can you put both of your arms over your head? S is for speech. Is your speech impaired? And if you get to the T, it's time to call 911 and do something about it. It's Stroke Awareness Week. Remember, fast. You see something happening, fast. Face, arms, speech, time to call. And last, on the serious stuff, man, I've had several calls this week already, growers that are in the rain zone. So get this, 9 inches of rain at Ancaster in the last 2 weeks. It's not as bad as Nebraska. We'll talk about this a little later, but a caller from Nebraska, 17 inches of rainfall in the month of May. And that's Nebraska, where it's normally super dry. Wow. But the stress level for the growers that do not have crop in the ground, and it's a bigger area than what I realized. So around Belmont, in fact, in the greater London area, if you're on the heavier clay soils, man, there is a lot of crop that simply has not gotten in the ground. It's not heavy clay like we get in Lambton County, where they're used to fighting into June because that's such tight clay soil, or Essex. Niagara Peninsula, actually in pretty good shape. They're the other region that often fights this, but there's been so much rain, and it's happened in isolated situations. That 9 inches at Ancaster, 4.5 inches of rain in one afternoon, 3 inches within an hour, erosion, and just, they've got hills around Ancaster, so the hollows were just absolutely flooded out. In fact, they talked about 60 feet of corn row being entirely washed out down into the hollows. The stress level, the mental stress is just incredible. Please, if you know someone in those areas, pick up the phone, call them, talk them through it. I've had growers call me saying, what do I do? I've got no corn in the ground. I need silage for my cows. Just take a step back, be calm. We'll get through this, but reach out and help support those people, because there's lots of stress out there. Okay, just before I get into the agronomy answers, Nature Nut Nick, who also, by the way, has 0 crop in the ground. So Nick, we feel for you, but he sent me the weather data, and wow, it has been warm in May. 575 crop heat units in May at Strathroy. The 10-year average is 457. So we're 120 ahead of normal percentage-wise. What that'd work out to? 20%, something like that, ahead of normal. It's been so warm that Alan at Renfrew tweeted me a picture. He planted oats on the 2nd of April. That's not even like Tyler in Brant County planting them, I think, 20th of February, something like that. Tyler, where are your oats at? Because Alan's oats are coming into head on June the 5th. We're looking at oats in head planted April the 2nd at Renfrew. Like, this is not one of the warm parts of Ontario. You just go, wowzers. That is incredible. But the rainfall, on the other hand, as I said, man, she's just nasty across most of Ontario and some other places, even in Manitoba, where they're often crying for more moisture. Kelvin Hepner works with Real Agriculture as well at Altona, saying, boy, the rain could actually stop. Not for all summer, but we've got enough. Like, stop for a little while. Yep, there's lots of stress out there from that perspective. Hey, AJ from Kansas sent me a text with a picture of the flyer for a wheat tour in Kansas that's stopping at his farm, and says, hey, Pete, if you happen to be in the area, stop by. I love it. I wish more people would do that. I'm never going to be in Kansas for your tour, unfortunately, AJ, because I need to be here in Ontario. But yeah, that is a bit of fun as well. I do appreciate that kind of stuff. All right, I want to move on, and I do want to hit corn quickly here, just because of the stress level and the corn that is not in the ground. Until June 10th, you're 100% fine. Even until the 15th of June, that's the cutoff for Agricor. Just keep cutting your heat units back. It still will be good corn. We do have short season hybrids that work right down, as James in Northern Ontario, to 72-day corn. That's pretty darn short. In the London region, you can probably plant corn on July the 1st if it's a 70-day hybrid and still get it to mature. It just isn't going to be the yield that we would get out of out of a 100-day hybrid. That's absolutely for sure. But on the June 15th deadline, my good friend John Hussick reminding us, call Agricor. If you think you are going to have unseeded acres, you're not going to get the corn in before June 15th, call Agricor, say it's too wet. Give them that heads up. It just holds you in good stead from that perspective. On the other hand, the corn that did go in and went in really tough, Paul Sullivan from Eastern Ontario saying there's a field that he drives by, they planted it tough, and it hasn't rained for a few days. The corn is at the 5-leaf stage. It's changing from the seminal root system to that secondary, the nodal root system. And yesterday, it was wilting in the field. So when you plant tough and you don't get rain, it can go south as well. Now, there's more rain coming, so that will save that crop. But regardless, corn is just getting into a pretty tight situation from that perspective. Soybeans, on the other hand, continue the crop insurance deadline June 30th. Remember, though, because Dean sent me some pictures, and he planted soybeans with a planter, and he watched them come up, and he just says, oh my gosh, planted beans forever now. We're done with the spill drill. Now that we're into June, row width matters, and narrow rows will canopy faster. It's about getting canopy closure. It's about building a factory before they go reproductive. So as we move into June and later into June, you're actually better off with narrow rows. In fact, my great friend Al McCollum always says, rows for show, drill for dough. But the later you go, the more important it is to have those narrow rows. And it gets to the point where 7.5s are better than 15s even. 10% more seed at this point. But keep increasing it. The later it goes, we need to get enough nodes, 2 million nodes per acre, 2 million spots on the soybean plant where we can make pods. That was Eric Richter's number. In order to get that, you just have to keep increasing that seeding rate. If we get into the end of June, you sort of get up into that 250,000 seeds per acre, or try to even get to 250,000 plants per acre, which would mean more than that in terms of seed. Just keep going down that particular road. Okay, I'm going to move on and just touch quickly on Group 14 injury. We are seeing a fair bit of this out there in soybean fields, and that's products like Aragon or Valterra. They're excellent herbicides. By the way, in fields with reasonably low weed pressure, man, the weed control products, the weed control we are getting is outstanding. Some of these setup programs that we use that, to hold the weeds back and not have a mass of weeds before we go in to clean up the cornfields, some of those setup programs are working so well, we may not have to go back in and clean up cornfields. So that's awesome. The downside is, with the Group 14 products, if you get that big rain right as the soybean is hooking through the soil, then they can get enough uptake of that product that it actually takes them out, that the cotyledon hook will get taken out and the plant actually can be killed from that. It's rare, but it does happen. It's particularly bad because they're water-soluble herbicides. If that water ponds and you get those little low ponding areas, it kind of moved from around that soybean seed into the low spot where that soybean seed is. We are definitely seeing some of that out there. The other thing that I will say is, if you want good weed control, what we are really seeing this year with a lot of these herbicides is that it takes water volume. Water volume, water volume, water volume. Glyphosate is the exception to that rule. But when we get into most other herbicides, even with soil-applied herbicides, it's 15 gallons of water is a minimum. 20 gallons of water is better. We're seeing that a lot as we look at trying to control these bigger weeds out there in the field and growers not getting good control. But if you up the water volume, it absolutely helps with that weed control. Hey, here's one other cool thing that I think I just throw in here. I saw a great Twitter discussion. I did not know this. Apparently, it's been out there forever. But if you add a 6-second squirt or a 4-second squirt of Dawn soap into every sprayer tank that you spray, it will keep your filters clean. And I'm going like, wow, that's pretty cool. Apparently it does not cause foam. I would have thought it caused foam. They say not, but it will keep your filters clean, particularly with products like atrazine, things, Sencor, that tend to clog up the filters. The Dawn soap seems to prevent that. But, and this is a big but, from Jason DeVoe, yes, it will keep your filters clean, but no, it does not remove the herbicide residue in the tank, in the lines, in the filter. So you look at it, you say, oh, I got no residue here. No, you still have to do the proper clean out with that herbicide residue. So a little bit of a trick if you're having filters plug, but it does not help from a tank residue standpoint. All right, I want to move on to nitrogen. And so a few cool questions around nitrogen. First, from Sean in Nebraska. So he's the grower. He was split applying his nitrogen. He put his first nitrogen shot on his winter wheat in late April. He was going to split his nitrogen. 17 inches of rain. He simply couldn't get through. The wheat is headed. His local agronomist said, wheat's headed, you're done. And he just reached out to say, the wheat looks so much like it needs more nitrogen, and they're telling me don't do it. Like, is there any chance? In our data, you can put nitrogen on wheat at least 10 days after heading, and you still get response. Now, you don't get the same response as if you put it on at growth stage 32, but you can 30 to 50 pounds of nitrogen will still be economical. You need about 21 days from the time you apply that nitrogen and get it into the ground for it to get into the plant and do some good. If you have less than 21 days of grain fill left, you're probably too late, but yes, post-heading still works. It depends on how long post-heading. And then Mark at Shelburne sends a very similar email saying, man, I'm split applying my nitrogen. I got a good shot up front. I think it was 80 or 100 pounds, something like that. 80 pounds, yes. But I was going to top it up. It simply hasn't been possible. The wheat is coming into head, or it's in boot stage. Does it still make sense to apply that nitrogen? And you know, how do I go about that? As we went through the conversation, I thought 28% nitrogen, and I was saying, do not burn the flag leaf. He says, no, we're dry. We're going to use urea, and we're going to stabilize the urea. And I'm going, no, stop. Do not. When the crop needs nitrogen that badly, stabilizers will only slow down the availability. The urea, yeah, just do it on a dry day, not dusty urea. You'll get zero burn. First rain, it's into the soil. It converts quickly with these soil temperatures. Boom, you've got nitrogen to the crop, but no stabilizer in that situation. Chris saying, okay, Peter, timing for corn side dress. No nitrogen applied, 30 pounds of nitrogen applied, 50 pounds of nitrogen applied. Well, first off, no nitrogen applied. Oh my gosh, side dress is now, because if we don't have enough nitrogen in around that corn plant at the 5-leaf stage, then we suffer yield loss. So if you have zero, the question is why zero? Get something on immediately, broadcast it, I don't care. If you have 30 pounds in the starter, then that buys you till an early side dress, so probably 6-leaf corn, something like that. If you have 50 pounds, it gets you to probably 8-leaf corn, but you're still always on the early side. Those are low amounts up front, and so we need to have that side dress there very quickly. The growers that can wait longer are the growers that have 100 pounds of nitrogen out there. And if you have 100 pounds of nitrogen out there, then your side dress can get to be waist-high corn or something in that range. Meanwhile, 100 pounds of nitrogen on, then what about nitrogen loss? Adam saying, you know, I have 100 pounds of nitrogen on in different application. What about nitrogen loss? Well, yeah, if you have ponded water, then you probably have lost some nitrogen. I'm not worried too much about leaching, particularly unless you're on a real blow sand. Leaching in season, it'll probably come back up. Not too worried there. In the ponded areas, in the areas that have stayed saturated for an extended period of time. Now, stayed saturated. So if they dry out in between, and then it rains again, and they go saturated for a day or two, and then it dries out, and that doesn't give you much yield loss, because the first day you don't much nitrogen loss, rather. The first day isn't much, and you can get 4 to 5% nitrogen loss per day if it stays saturated. If you put on 100 pounds of nitrogen and it stayed saturated for 2 weeks, man, you could have definitely some nitrogen loss. The other question, though, is if it stayed saturated that long, then what yield potential do you have? So you have to look at balancing both of those. But yes, definitely some concern over nitrogen loss in that corn crop. How do you tell? You do a pre-sidrate nitrate test. We still have time to figure that out and make the right application on corn. Okay, once again, this is going to be long, but wheat, oh my gosh. It's just wheat. People love to hate wheat, but there's so many growers have said to me, what is going on? Sean's in the field on Friday. It's still heading out. He goes to the field on Sunday. It's all headed out, and the anthers are already dried out. He's going like, what is going on? It's just wheat. Wheat can do those kind of things. The reality is, it is a high-risk year for fusarium head blight and for dawn in the crop. We haven't had one for a while. This is it. The dawncast has been predicting from anywhere from 2 parts per million to 12 parts per million. Now there's some season to go. That isn't a carved in stone thing, but it's a fusarium year. Even if you are a day or two late to get your fusarium fungicide on, get it on. It absolutely matters. And Mark, stripe rust does not affect seed quality. So we have stripe rust. I don't care. You can still keep that seed, but you should be buying certified seed. And by the way, if you get your T3 fungicide applied, that will control the stripe rust for the balance of the season that you need to fill that grain. So no, you don't have to spray a second time to control that stripe rust. With that, I am out of time. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with a really long word for Wednesday, June the 5th. Hey, keep the comments, keep the questions coming. I'll keep talking. Yeah, too long. Next week. See you then.